Hello, welcome back to my world of stuff and welcome to another episode in my Blu Ray Files series where I do a little alphabetical trot through the Blu-rays in my collection. I've done A and B. It's time to hit the letter C. Feels a bit like Sesame Street. Right, letter C. Quite a few discs. Probably about the same number as the A's and B's, so let's crack on with all the Blu-ray discs beginning with C. The first one I've got is a bit of a horror classic, Cabin in the Woods. This is directed by Drew Goddard with a script by Joss Whedon. I'm not supposed to talk about Joss Whedon now, but I still think he's a bit of a genius. He created Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I mean, for that I am forever grateful. This is a horror film that he did or came out in 2012. Stars Kristen Connolly, Chris Hemsworth, your Thor. And it's a very clever, witty attempt to subvert the Cabin in the Woods horror genre. That sort of subgenre of horror films where rather stupid teenagers go off on holidays or weekends and vacations to mysterious, isolated cabins in the wood where they're usually stalked by a psychopath or a mutant or families of mutants or something. Now, this does it with a really interesting twist, and the finale of it, the whole resolution of it, is very redolent of a particular Buffy storyline. It goes into some weird places. But it's a very good film. As it says in the front, it's groundbreaking, insanely enjoyable. Game changer. Whether it's a game changer, I'm not entirely sure, but I had a damn good time with this one. And it's, as you'll hear me say a lot on these file videos, do a rewatch. Next one up on my list is one I picked up fairly recently. I think you probably saw me mentioning this one on a recent pickup video. It's Captain Phillips, the Steelbook edition, which I picked up, I think it was from CEX a few weeks back. Steelbook edition of a very good, underrated film directed by Paul Greengrass, starring Tom Hanks. It's the true story of Captain Phillips in 2009 hijacking of his container ship Maersk, Alabama by a crew of Somali pirates. A very exciting film. Tom Hanks is always good value, and he's particularly good in this film. Highly recommended if you've not seen it, and a very nice little Steelbook edition. Next up, we have a bit of a classic, Brian De Palma's Carrie, starring Sissy Spacek and John Travolta. This is from, I think, in 1976, based on one of Stephen King's early works. The story about a high school girl terrorised and bullied by her contemporaries, but she turns the table on them because she has some extraordinary psychotic or psychic powers, which she turns to her advantage in the well-known finale. Very good classic horror film. I do a rewatch, I do believe. Next up, we have, this is a film you probably won't have seen. I don't think it's been released on physical media in the UK. It's probably very hard to find. This is a Region 4 disc from Australia, and I was sent this to review. I think I reviewed it when it came out on streaming, and then I was sent the physical release. Very pleased to get it. What is it, by the way? It is called Cargo, and it stars Martin Freeman from, The Office, Sherlock, now part of the MCU, of course. This came out in 2018. It's a South Australian Film Corporation film. This is really very good. This is a zombie film with a slight difference. Martin Freeman plays Andy and his wife Kay, Susie Porter, the survivors of a pandemic, which is, as we discover, is sort of a zombie pandemic. They're holed up in a houseboat with their only daughter, Rosie, and they're keeping away from the shore because of this pandemic that is rampaging out of control. But things go horribly wrong, and Andy is left wandering the outback in the wilderness, trying to protect his young child against the forces of terrible pandemic. A very good, in fact, a brilliant film. If you've not seen Cargo, try and track it down. I do like Martin Freeman. He gives a very unusual performance. It's a very unusual role for him, and it's a shame this film isn't better known. Certainly deserves to be. So if you get a chance to track this down, whether it's on streaming or a physical copy somewhere, as I said, I don't think it's come out on physical over here, but really I would recommend it. It's a very tense, gripping film, and it runs, it's only 105 minutes, not a super long film, but it's really very good. Next up, we have a bit of Bondage, Casino Royale, Daniel Craig's first outing as 007 Super Spy. What is there left to say about this film? But back when No Time to Die came out, I did reviews of all the Craig films to date, and then No Time to Die. And I hadn't seen them for a while, and I must admit I've enjoyed all of them. If you troll back in my back catalogue, you'll find the video, the review of Casino Royale. I've got this on 4K now, but the Blu-ray is still sitting in my collection. Next up, we have another film I haven't seen for a long while, Angelina Jolie and John Malkovich in a true story, The Changeling. This is directed by... Oh, it's Clint Eastwood. I didn't realize it was Clint Eastwood film. Good Lord. And it was written by J. Michael Straczynski from Babylon 5. This is a true story of single mother Christine Collins, played by Angelina Jolie. She leaves for work. Her son disappears without trace. 5 months later, the police reunite them. But with a mother's instinct, she realizes that, is this her son? She doesn't think it is her son. It's not her boy. And she embarks on a quest for the truth to find out what has actually happened to her son. And she uncovers the world of corruption, which is a very good film, very tense, very dramatic film. Runs for quite a while. I never find the running time to these things. But if you haven't seen it, it's one you can pick up fairly cheaply. Very good, tense, character-driven thriller. This is one I picked up a while back. I think it was probably in one of my charity shop hauls. And I've just noticed, in fact, yeah, I picked this up. I don't know where I picked it up. Anyway, it's... Sorry, I'm just wandering a bit. This is... it's supposed to be the Blu-ray and DVD edition. I've just noticed it's only the Blu-ray. Which I don't mind, because I would have been a bit annoyed if it had just been the DVD. It's an Alfred Hitchcock classic anyway. It's called Charade or Charade. Starring... sorry, it's not Alfred Hitchcock. What am I talking about? Stanley Donen, Cary Grant and Aubrey Hepburn in Charade. Sort of screwball comedy, a sparkling thriller. The best Hitchcock movie Hitchcock never made. That's why I was thinking it was Hitchcock. Yeah. Cary Grant, Audrey Hepburn, filmed on location in Paris, but a young woman meets a charming stranger on a skiing holiday. She returns home, planning to ask her husband for divorce, but finds all of their possessions gone. I may well have seen this years and years ago. Certainly not seen it since I picked up this Blu-ray, so I think it's probably due a watch at some point. This is a great film. This is a terrific film. Again, quite underrated. Directed by Alfonso Cuarón, who of course went on to do things like Gravity. It's Clive Owen, Julianne Moore and Michael Caine in Children of Men, based on the book by P.D. James. Terrific, really gritty, hard film. An end-of-the-world apocalyptic thriller where females no longer give birth. The females have become infertile and the human race is running down. Or is it? Clive Owen's character, Theo, is asked to escort a young woman to safety. The young woman is pregnant. It seems the human race might have a slight chance. But of course, there are certain forces ranged against him on the way. Terrific film. Really, really good. A really good thriller. Very exciting and some spectacular action towards the end. Children of Men. Another absolute classic. This, I think this is a Region 1 version of one of the greats, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. I mean, what can I say about this one? Based on the book by Ian Fleming, stars Dick Van Dyke, Sally Ann Howes, Lionel Jeffries. An iconic film. I remember this when I was a kid going to see it in the cinema. I had the toy model of Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. It's just a classic, timeless children's adventure film. A lot of fun. This is an interesting sort of horror science fiction film. It was spawned from the found footage phase craze we went through a few years ago. Directed by Josh Trank. This is the film that led to him making his disastrous Fan Four-Stick film. This is Chronicle, a sort of a found footage superhero film. What would happen if these kids suddenly found they had extraordinary super abilities? A very good film. Stars Dane DeHaan, Alex Russell, Michael B. Jordan, Michael Kelly, Ashley Hinshaw. Of course, I think Michael B. Jordan went on to be in the Fantastic Four film that Trank did a few years later. It's extended edition. What Are You Capable Of? Very good film if you've not seen it. Very unusual. But the found footage element dates it a little these days. Another classic. I've never seen this, but I picked it up on Blu-ray. A classic film. I think it's 1971. Stanley Kubrick's Clockwork Orange. The tale of a dystopian future. starring Malcolm McDowell as hooligan Alex. His journey from amoral punk to brainwashed proper citizen and back again forms the dynamic arc of Kubrick's future shock version of Anthony Burgess' novel. Controversial, banned for years, now freely available again, and it is a classic, and one of these days I'm going to watch this baby. Next up, another classic, but I've never really got on with it all that well. It seemed a bit pompous and portentous to me, but I accept it was one of those classics of the early 80s that sort of legitimised science fiction after decades in the ghetto, the B-movie ghetto, if you like. Stanley Kubrick, Steven Spielberg's Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Yeah, what can you say about this? Again, another one of those classic films. Richard Dreyfuss starring as cable worker Roy Neary, who, along with several other stunned bystanders, experiences a close encounter of the first kind. UFOs soaring across the sky. Of course, the situation escalates to the close encounter of the third kind, which is actual contact with alien life. It is a classic film. It's a majestic film. I've always found it a little bit heavy going, a little bit pompous, but you know what I'm going to say. Haven't watched it for ages. Deserves a rewatch. This is one I have watched fairly regularly because I just have a good time with it. It's Cockneys versus Zombies. It came out in 2012. I like this film because I went to see a press screening of it when I was more proactive doing stuff for Starburst Magazine. I used to go up to London to see press screenings and so on. This is written by James Moran, who's written some Doctor Who stuff in the past. And it's directed by Matthias Hohen, who is still making films these days. It's basically a story of a zombie outbreak in London where an old people's home is besieged, and the oldsters and some younger relatives have to fight up off the zombie attack. It's got very much an all-star cast. It's got some classic. It's got Michelle Ryan, ex-EastEnders. It's got Richard Briers, from The Good Life, Tony Selby, Alan Ford, Honor Blackman. A lot of them, unfortunately, have passed away since this film was made, but I have a lot of time with this film. It's very good fun. And I'm proud to say that my review from Starburst Magazine is quoted on the cover. Mad rollicking mashup of Shaun of the Dead and Lockstock. And I do remember when Mark Kermode reviewed this on TV, he disagreed with that assessment of it. Well, I disagree with him disagreeing with his assessment, because I think that's exactly what it is. Next up, we've got, I mentioned this actually in my review of Edge of Tomorrow, I got the title right this time, which went up a little while ago. It's a Tom Cruise movie where Tom Cruise is acting out of character with Jamie Foxx, Collateral, where he plays a hitman who inveigles his way into the life of Jamie Foxx's taxi driver on a terrorized trip around Los Angeles. Really good film. Again, I haven't seen for a while, but it, like I said in my previous video, it was really nice to see Tom Cruise acting against type. I'd like to see him do that more often. Now he's getting a bit older and probably not going to be doing quite so many action films, but he's terrific in this if you've not seen it. This came out in 2004. Really good film, Collateral. Next is one I haven't seen yet. It's The Conjuring 2 with a lovely slipcase. I don't know when I picked this up. I've seen the first Conjuring, which I quite enjoyed. Haven't got around to watching this yet. This, of course, is based on the famous Enfield haunting, which has been dramatised on a mini-series on British television a few years ago. But this, of course, stars Vera Farmiga and Patrick Wilson as the investigators, Lorraine and Ed Warren, coming to London to investigate the infamous Enfield haunting. I hear this is a very good film. I just haven't got around to watching it. It might be one I do. If I get around to doing a series of videos for the Halloween season, then this may be one that I'll sit and have a look at. It's The Conjuring 2. Here's a film which achieved a certain notoriety during the pandemic when it started off a couple of years ago. It's Contagion. This is a film which came out way back when. It came out in 2011, in fact. And it's remarkable watching it again now, or then, as people were flooding to this because it reflected the life that people were going through, PPE and isolation and so on. It's remarkable how close to the bone this was in terms of what it was actually like when we were living in pandemic times. It's quite chilling. Again, an all-star cast: Matt Damon, Lawrence Fishburne, Jude Law, Gwyneth Paltrow, Kate Winslet. It's an all too plausible, as we now know, story of what could happen with a killer pandemic on the loose. Very tight, very taut, very, in fact, terrifying. Still terrifying, even though we've lived through something just like it. And of course, this became a cause célèbre, if you like, during the early days of the pandemic when everybody was scrabbling around to see it. Here's a film which I think is also very underrated. You might not have seen this. This stars Kevin Bacon from 2015. It's called Cop Car. This is directed by John Watts, and this was the film that led to him being given the 3 recent Spider-Man films from Sony Marvel. A really good, very tense thriller where Kevin Bacon plays a cop who leaves his car unattended. It gets stolen in a little joyride by a couple of young kids. They got no malice in their minds. They just see a police car and they want to drive a police car. What they don't realise is that the cop is corrupt. There's a dead body in the boot and he's determined to get the car back. If you've not seen it, you can pick this up fairly cheaply in places like CX. Very good, tense little thriller. It's about 90 minutes. It doesn't have stage welcome, but it's a very good film and it reminds you how good Kevin Bacon can be. Next up is another one I've not seen. I picked this up for £1, I think, at CX a while back, or could possibly have been in one of Poundland's occasional sales. It's a horror film called The Corridor. Now, I know nothing about this, never seen it. It sounds fairly bog standard. There's nobody in it of particular note. 2010 vintage. If anybody out there has seen this, as I say, it was bouncing around in the cheap shops a couple of years ago. One of the most terrifying new films of the year, says AintItCool.com. Well, what can you say? If anybody's seen this, let me know in the comments down below if it's worth having a look at. Here's a film from 2010. This is Breck Eisner's remake of The Crazies, one of George Romero's best-known films, in which David Dutton, played by Timothy Oliphant, which rhymes with elephant incidentally, and his pregnant wife Judy, Rada Mitchell, find themselves trapped in the once idyllic town they can no longer recognise because a mysterious toxin in the water supply turns everyone exposed to it into mindless killers, zombies in other words. I've seen the original, very good. This is good too. The Crazies, again, is one you can pick up fairly cheaply in CEX and things these days. Worth a look if you've not seen it. Next, we have a Guillermo del Toro film, one of his not so well regarded films, but it's very atmospheric, as you would expect. Stars Tom Hiddleston, Mia Wachowski, Jessica Chastain, Crimson Peak in a slipcover, for those of you who care about things like that. When her heart is stolen by a seductive stranger, a young woman is swept away to a house atop a mountain of blood-red clay, a place filled with secrets that will haunt her forever. Between desire and darkness, between mystery and madness, there lies the truth behind Crimson Peak. It's not really sort of supernatural, though it leads you to think that it is. It has all those elements to it. But it's very good, very atmospheric, quite creepy, with some great performances. That's Crimson Peak. 4 more to go. This is a recent one, Cruella. I picked this up in, it was marked down to about £8, £9 in Asda a few months back, not long after it came out. Emma Stone as early version of Cruella de Vil, a great Disney sort of live action reimagining with a good cast. Emma Thompson is there, Joel Fry. Really good, lively, colourful film that is quite sort of referential to the legend of Cruella de Vil and the 101 Dalmatians, which comes afterwards. And I understand there's going to be a sequel at some point. Don't know if we need that, but this sort of did quite well during the early post-pandemic period. This is another quite fun film, which, again, I picked this up, charity shop probably. This is called Cuban Fury, slipcase. Stars Nick Frost, Rashida Jones, Chris O'Dowd and Ian McShane. It's the story of a chap called Bruce Garrett, who's underconfident and out of shape. He's played by Nick Frost, as you can imagine. And he takes up salsa lessons. Only one woman, his smart, funny and gorgeous new boss, Julie, played by Rashida Jones from Parks and Recreation, can reignite his Latin fire, but he's way out of his league. And with expert Lothario and alpha male office nemesis Drew, Chris O'Dowd, in rampant pursuit, come Bruce's loyal sister, Olivia Colman, childhood dance mentor Ian McShane, and crazy new amateur salsa pal help him unshackle his dancing beast. It's another one of those nice, feel-good sort of British comedies. It won't frighten the horses, it won't change your life, but it's 28 minutes of good-natured fun. It's a good cast and it's very pleasant. It's directed by James Griffiths, and again, you'll pick this up fairly cheaply. Next up, we have, this is another one I've never seen. I bought this years ago, I've never watched it. This is Brad Pitt and Kate Blanchett in Curious Case of Benjamin Button. This is the guy who, I think, is it a true story? Anyway, this is a guy, no, it can't be a true story. A man who's born in his 80s and ages backwards, directed by David Fincher. Now, I've never watched it because I was sort of put off by some of the reviews and comments I've seen that it's a bit of a slow burn, a bit, a bit sluggish, and I've just never found the time to sit and watch it. It's a long old slog too, nearly 3 hours, so I would like to think that I'll watch it one day, but there's absolutely no guarantee of that. And finally, we have one which, again, I think there is a review on the channel for. I picked this up not long ago, and I did a retro movie review of Hammer's Curse of the Werewolf, starring Oliver Reed, one of his first sort of starring roles. This came out in 1961, set in 18th century Spain, where a young lad called Leon is born following a savage attack on his mother, and it turns out he is a werewolf. It's sort of tame by today's horror standards, but it's one I remember watching back in the day in the 70s when BBC used to show these sort of horror double bills of Universal Horrors and then Hammer Horrors, and I was fortunate enough to be allowed to stay up to watch these things, and it sort of gave me this sort of background and knowledge of these sorts of films, and it's very good. I mean, yes, it's of its era, it's dated, it's, it has a certain feel to it, but it's good retro fun. That's Curse of the Werewolf. Right, that's me C's done. I've done me C's. Thank you for watching this video. Hope you enjoyed this little series. If you are, leave a comment down below if you've got any of these titles. If it's the ones I haven't seen, I mentioned, if you've seen them. Should I hurry to put the corridor in my Blu-ray player? What about Benjamin Button? Is life too short to watch a 3-hour film about a man who ages backwards? I'm not sure. Let me know. Leave a comment down below. Also, if you've just stumbled across this video and think, this is all right, I suppose not too irritating, why not press that subscribe button and the like button, leave a comment, and stick on board for the journey of a lifetime. Right, that's it for now. I'll see you very soon until I do. Hey, keep taking the stuff.